Welcome to Falk and File with your hosts, Mike Falk and Jake File.
Welcome back to another episode of Falk and File. I'm Mike Falk.
And I'm Jake File.
On today's episode, we're going to start by talking about the UWEC hockey team, which is national champions today. I mean, I know we're all very happy to say that, because how often has UW-Eau Claire been national champions? Never. This is the very first time. They went to Lake Placid and they defeated their opponents by a score of 5-3 in the national championship game. I was told they're greatly outnumbered by the other fans, but yet they still won. Quote unquote from their goalie, they shut the other fans up. It was great. Congratulations to our local UW-Eau Claire Blue Gold hockey team on being national champions. Now also, staying with the hockey trend, the Minnesota Wild, they are just smoking hot right now. We have a shortened season due to the lockout, but the Wild, as of right now, are in third place in the Western Conference, and they are 6 points ahead of the 8th place team, which is the last team to get a playoff spot. Last night they defeated Dallas, who, if anyone remembers, they were the former Minnesota North Stars and now the Dallas Stars, so kind of a rivalry game. In Dallas, they beat Dallas by a score of 7-4, 3-goal win. The Wild are super hot right now, and I'm very, very confident. You can mark my words. The Wild are going to be a playoff team this year. So, with all that being said, Jake, you and I are both well aware there's a certain tournament going on right now called March Madness.
Yeah.
It's been very exciting. What's your favorite part so far?
My favorite part definitely would be the upsets. Especially, cheering for Florida Gulf Coast. They they beat Georgetown by 10, and then the very next day they beat San Diego State. I think what they have, what a lot of other teams don't have, maybe a couple teams you have, is that will to win, that surefire thing. Their team captain, Sherwood Brown, when I would watch him during March Madness, I like calling him downtown Sherwood Brown shooting the threes, but I think what they have is a fire to win, and like a lot of teams that win a lot of championships, they they catch fire, and when they do, they win it. They'll probably definitely go far, but that's one of my favorite things about March Madness right now.
The upsets. Not only did you have Florida Gulf Coast winning, you had Harvard winning too.
Yeah.
I mean, Harvard being New Mexico, frankly, I got that one wrong in my bracket, as did the vast majority of other people. But Florida Gulf Coast, back to them, they're called Dunk City. Their style of play, you mentioned their fire to win, their passion, their intensity, and their dunks. I think I saw 4 alley-oops in like the last 10 minutes of their game against San Diego State. I mean, I loved watching it, frankly. I mean, there was just so much fun. It was almost like watching the Harlem Globetrotters, or maybe the Miami Heat, as we'll get to later in the show. But yeah, that's just a great story. And they are the first 15 seed to ever advance to the Sweet 16 in March Madness history, which, frankly, that's incredible. On to more local March Madness. Hate to say it, the Badgers are done.
Yeah, I think the Badgers kind of messed up everyone's bracket. They weren't on that day. They just kind of, messed up. They just lost to Ole Miss. It was just a wreck. Like, you see all the highlights of Ole Miss. They got the shots. Wisconsin was shooting. They were just off. Like, there was a part where they had Wisconsin shooting a 3, missing, getting the rebound, shooting, missing again, getting the rebound, and they just kept missing. They just did not have it that day. And I think that's what makes March Madness what it is, because if you're on that day, you're going to win. It kind of matters how much you win in the season, gets the wins, gets you the seed, but on that day, you have to be on in order to win.
Well, and the other thing is, too, I look at a team like Wisconsin. I don't think Ole Miss could have beat Wisconsin in a best-of-7 series like the NBA playoffs format. But it's just like you said, you have to be on or off that day, and that will determine your thin. That's also why Florida Gulf Coast. There's no way they could have beat Georgetown in a best-of-7 series. But in one game, one day, they just happened to be the better team. Yeah. Georgetown didn't make their shots, 2 seed goes down. Now, let's get your prediction. Will Florida Gulf Coast beat Florida on Friday night?
I think greatly for the state of Florida, it's great. They have the Heat winning. They have Florida doing well, Florida Gulf Coast doing well.
And don't forget Miami.
Yeah. And, but beating Florida, I could see it. I could actually see it. I mean, they have the fire, they have the confidence. I mean, if you have the confidence, you can do anything. I know it sounds really cheesy, but
No, it's the truth.
yeah.
Especially when it's win one game one day. It's especially the truth in that scenario.
yeah. But yeah, I could maybe see them beating Florida. Right now I'm about 60-40 on it, 60%. They probably could. They actually probably could, and I believe in them.
And frankly, I would love to see it. I mean, who doesn't want to see the underdog win just a crazy style of game? I mean, I do. And if Florida Gulf Coast wins, geez, I should place a bet with someone. The Big Ten is doing phenomenal. The Big Ten has a 10-3 record right now in March Madness. They have 4 teams in the Sweet 16. The Big Ten has Ohio State, Michigan, and Indiana, all in the Sweet 16. And coincidentally, they're all in different brackets. So it's a long shot, but it is possible we could have an all Big Ten Final Four. One can dream.
Yeah.
But what about the Big Ten? I mean, some people have argued this might be the best year ever for the Big Ten. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I feel pretty good about it. I mean, with the only thing that was disappointing, I know, is Wisconsin losing to kind of mess up the Big Ten, good record. But the Big Ten have been doing great. Indiana seems like they are back to true #1 form, along with Michigan and Michigan State. They're also doing very well. Ohio State has been winning blowout-wise against the teams they've had to play, but they got a tough one against Arizona right now. And Arizona always seems to sneak in and do pretty well. But in the Big Ten in general, not just basketball-wise, but football-wise, I mean, they're not that bad either.
Yeah.
And just sports-wise in general, I don't know, the Big Ten are actually starting to rise, in power in the different kind of divisions in college sports.
And one thing I even heard you forgot to say was Michigan and Michigan State, they more or less killed the people they played, too.
Yeah.
Granted, they got the luxury of playing in Auburn Hills, Michigan, but still, I mean, you still have to perform, and they performed. So I'm very excited to see where these Big Ten teams go. I have to admit, I wasn't too high on Michigan before March Madness, but I'm watching them now and thinking, ooh.
Yeah, same as I.
Yeah. So coming back to local, Minnesota. They defeated UCLA in their first round game. They got into March Madness as an 11 seed.
Yeah.
They lost to Florida in the second round. Tubby Smith, their head coach, is gone. I'll give you some stats here. Tubby Smith had a record of 124 wins and 81 losses in 6 seasons with the Gophers. He won 20 games, 5 different seasons. However, this is why he was fired. He was 46-62 in Big Ten play and never finished higher than 6th in the conference. I mean, I'm just going to tell you right up front, I don't agree with the fact that Tubby Smith was fired at all. I thought, I personally thought he did pretty good because you have to remember, the Gophers were near rock bottom when he came. Mm-hmm. And he kind of brought them to the top. They went to the Sweet 16 one year while he was there.
Yeah.
And funny enough, that Sweet 16 was in Minneapolis, the same year the Badgers were there, which
Yeah.
I thought was awesome. I wanted to get tickets, but I couldn't. But what do you think about Tubby Smith's firing?
I mean, a lot of people were disappointed, that he got fired after they beat UCLA, having an upset. I could see, I kind of, disagree on firing him, but take a devil's advocate here, and the reason why they might have fired him was maybe they wanted something mixed up. They came in with such high potential this year, and that they're supposed to win it all, or not win it all, but, get really, really far. I mean, they did beat UCLA, but if you think about it, UCLA didn't have their best player that night either. He was out with injury, which may have played a part. I mean, he was a good coach. I mean, maybe they just wanted to mix it up, maybe thinking, hey, maybe this isn't the right guy. We should try a different guy with the same amount of people. Maybe, and maybe just do better. Maybe just shake it up wise, chemistry too. But I think overall, I think the firing maybe in the long run might be good, might be bad, but we don't know yet.
And that's true. I mean, yeah, you have a very good point. But I don't know. I still have to say, the Big Ten, people have argued it's better than it's ever been this year. And I don't know. I mean, the Gophers might have been the 9 seed in the Big Ten tournament, but they're still good enough to get an 11 seed overall. They made the Big Ten tournament again. If I remember, yeah, they made 3 NCAA tournament appearances under Smith's tenure in 6 years. You have to remember, to be in the NCAA tournament, you have to be in the top 20% of the whole pool.
Yeah.
68 out of 345 teams make it. That's just under 20%.
And Minnesota isn't one of the largest schools. I mean,
No. And they've never had a big history of being popular in basketball, or being good in basketball, I mean. They have one national championship in, I think it was like 1939.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Yeah.
But stuff happens. So now with the Sweet 16 coming up, I'm going to give you the matchups. Thursday night will start out when Marquette will play Miami. After that, Arizona will play Ohio State. After that, Indiana will play Syracuse. And the top off Thursday night, we have a 12-13 matchup. Wichita State will play LaSalle. I'm sorry, that's a 9-13 matchup. I'm sorry. On Friday night, Louisville plays Oregon. And you can tell I have some questions to ask you out of these matchups.
Yeah.
Kansas will play Michigan. Michigan State will play Duke. And the nightcap is Florida versus Florida Gulf Coast. What do you think? You know, we haven't talked about Marquette yet. Well, I mean, now, Marquette, you have to remember, they came into the tournament as a 3 seed. They really play a street ball type style. I mean, honestly, when I was watching them the other night, I kind of had a hard time watching it because it wasn't a traditional style basketball. It was very frenetic pace, almost looked sloppy, yet they were getting a lot of points, they were doing a lot of good plays, and they won a very exciting game against Davidson. They also won a very exciting game on Saturday night. So, you know, they're in the Sweet 16. They are co-champions of the Big East, which might not be as good as the Big Ten this year, but it's still a very good conference. What do you think of Marquette?
I think Marquette actually, when I was watching, you know, sitting on my couch with some friends or whatever, watching basketball during spring break, the Marquette games, I think both Marquette games were probably in the top 5, one of the best, like some of the best games that we've had so far, especially with the close one with the very first round against Davidson, where they kind of I thought I was like, oh, Davidson's gonna win, it's gonna be an upset. But in that last second with the shot, and then they won by 1 point, and then the same against Butler was a good one.
But don't forget, against Davidson, on top of that, they were down by 5 points with 27 seconds to go, and they came back and won.
Yeah. And Butler, too, where they beat Butler. And in the regular season, they lost to Butler in a buzzer beater. But this year, they won a really close one against Butler.
Well, let me ask you this. When they showed that flashback, did you, in your mind, think, oh, crap, is this going to be a repeat of history? Because I have to be honest, I was so worried that they were jinxing us by showing that flashback and there was going to be another buzzer beater.
Yeah.
Because Butler got the ball back. They were down by 2. It was the exact same situation. They could have done it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, but matchup wise, just to go over a couple matchups, not every single one. We don't have enough time.
Oh, of course not.
Marquette and Miami. I don't know. Miami's good. A lot of people have them as champions. I could maybe see Marquette winning, but not highly likely. I mean, their way of ball is really fast paced. It's really nice. But if they get caught out of position, bad stuff can happen for Marquette.
Yeah. Now, what about, I know they're in the Pac-12, but Louisville versus Oregon, we're talking about a 12 seed Oregon going up against 1 seed Louisville. Honestly, I have to go with Louisville here, but when I say that, I would not be that surprised if Oregon won. What do you think?
I think the same thing with Florida Gulf Coast coming into this bracket or coming in this tournament. A lot of people didn't give Oregon that much of a chance. They said they were doing good. They were on fire, kind of like how Florida Gulf Coast is. I think that's the same thing with Florida Gulf Coast on one side, with Oregon on the other side. They have kind of that will to win, that fast pace kind of ball. They are determined to win. They're ready to go. Myself in my own bracket, was really 50-50 on Oregon, which I picked the wrong way. I mean, even Oregon beat St. Louis, and they have an incredible defense. But I could actually see, I think Oregon has more of a chance beating Louisville than Marquette actually does beating Miami.
Really? and seed, that would be impressive because you're saying a 12 seed has a better chance to beat a 1 seed than a 3 seed has to beat a 2 seed, which is a great thing about March Madness. It's just the way the matchups
Especially
can roll.
this year, too.
Oh,
with
yeah,
all these
that
upsets.
difference between 16 and 1 is much less than it's ever been in the past.
Yeah.
And I said before this bracket, and I'm going to say it again, I'm willing to bet a 16 seed will beat a 1 seed the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't happen this year, so I guess I'm going to bet a 16 seed will beat a 1 seed last year. Maybe I'll have to pick it in my bracket just to look smart. So now that we're getting near the end of this segment, let's start with your Final Four predictions. I guess you can go first.
All right. I know I just said Oregon will probably beat Louisville. I'm between the fence between Louisville and Oregon as one. Another is Miami,
Well,
probably.
wait, Louisville or Oregon? It's called picks for
All
a
right,
reason.
you know what? Just because I want to pick different than you, I'll pick Oregon.
Okay.
Then my other pick is Miami.
Okay.
Ohio State looked incredible. I don't know. I don't see Arizona keeping up with them. And then lastly, I'm really between Florida Gulf Coast and Kansas. My brain says Kansas, but my heart says Florida Gulf Coast with Sherwood Brown.
You know, one of the beautiful things is this is on tape, so if we're right, granted it's Sweet 16, we still called it. I'm going to start with Miami, just because honestly I picked them as a champion in the beginning. I'm just got to stick with them. So I'm going to say Miami for one team. And honestly, how can you root against Florida Gulf Coast? They may not have as great of a team as any of the other teams are going to play. Florida is the better team on paper. But I look at the heart of Florida Gulf Coast, and I'm like, you know what? They could beat Florida. They could beat whoever they might be matched up against next. So I'm going to go Florida Gulf Coast. After that, I'm going to go for a little more of a traditional pick with Duke, just because it's Duke.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still hot right now, as long as they can hit their threes the way they always do. And I have to go Ohio State. The reason, honestly, is I went through the 3 picks without making a Big Ten pick, and I feel like I'd be really hard-pressed not to pick at least one Big Ten team. So I have to go Ohio State. Now, who's your champion?
My champion. Well, messed up my bracket with St. Louis losing. I had them winning it because I wanted to be a little hipster and pick a different team. But my champion out of the Final Four.
Yes.
Oof, man, this is tough. No, we don't have a lot of time, but
Oh,
man, I really want to cheer for Florida Gulf Coast.
You're going to pick Florida Gulf Coast
I want to
as your
pick
champion.
Florida Gulf Coast because then they can make a movie about it 2 years later or something.
You
know, they're
know,
running out of movie ideas.
That's a good pick. Honestly, I picked Miami as my champion in my original bracket before this all started. I'm going to stick with Miami. Miami is my pick for a champion. You know what, folks? This is the beauty of March Madness. We don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. It's just wonderful. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the NBA. There's a certain win streak going on, Jake. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just real quick, go over it. Not much else news, going on in the NBA, but the Heat are on their win streak, of course.
27 games.
27 games. That's second best right now in history. I can easily see them probably winning it. I mean, they're tougher games.
Breaking the record, you
Breaking
mean.
the record, yeah. I mean, their toughest next game coming up in the next, next 10 or next 5 games or so would be the Knicks, which is I think going to be on national TV for everybody to watch. And the next hardest game probably be the 76ers. But that last game to get the record is against the Milwaukee Bucks. So how nice would that be for the Milwaukee Bucks? Upset the Heat and not let them get that record.
It would be a local team. It would be a great news story. And one thing I realized, too, the Bucks are a few games ahead of the 9th seed. The Bucks are the 8th seed right now.
Yeah.
There's a good chance in the first round playoffs the Bucks would be matched up against the Heat.
All right.
How do you see that going? I know it's a ways out, but if that happens, I'm going to predict a sweep, in all honesty. I hate to say it, watch the local Bucks go, but what would you predict?
I would predict maybe the Bucks will win 1 or 2 games. Hopefully, make them look good. But, yeah, I don't see them matching up with the Heat.
Now, opening day is about a week away. And honestly, this gets me really excited because, snow is starting to melt. Baseball's coming back. Oh, yeah. Baseball's coming back. We have baseball news for you. For For the Milwaukee Brewers, Kyle Loesch signed a 3-year contract worth $33 million this year. And some stats for you about Kyle Loesch. Last year, he had his best season ever. He went 16-3 with a 2.86 ERA, and he helped the St. Louis Cardinals, who I hate, win a National League wildcard spot. So get him off the crappy St. Louis Cardinals team, and let's come over to Milwaukee. Come on, Kyle Loesch. Come on, be a good player. So yeah, that gets me happy. We got a great pitcher, and the Brewers pitching really, really struggled last year, so they really need a great pitcher. Kyle Loesch, hopefully he's their saving grace.
Yeah, pick him up on my fantasy baseball team.
Yes,
I still have no clue what I'm doing, but.
All right, let's go to NFL. We have about 5 minutes left.
All right, just give you a quick rundown. Just how it goes. Elvis Dumervil ended up trying to take a pay cut for the Broncos, but ended up having a fax machine mishap and missed it by 7 minutes for the deadline and accidentally got cut. So the Broncos ended up losing $3 million dead weight just to pay him for no reason. Then he, was decided between the Broncos and the Ravens, and he decided on the Ravens. He said there's no ill will. He just thought the contract was better, thought it'd be nicer just to go to the Ravens. Real quick, other free agent news. Wes Welker ended up going to the Broncos, and Amendola went to the Patriots. They're both very, very well slot receivers. Welker goes to Manning, and I see him doing extremely well as Amendola, who has that, I think, last year when he broke his collarbone in that game when he was with the Rams. He's an incredible receiver. He's very underrated. He was an undrafted free agent. I know his heart was very well. He broke his collarbone. I just remember him on the sidelines in the locker room just throwing his helmet, just knowing that his season was over and he couldn't do anything about it. But I don't know. I see them both doing very well. Lastly, with one of the last things is Darrelle Revis still always in the news. They're talking about picks, maybe next year's first round, second round pick. That's what the Bucs are willing to give, but the Jets really just want that first round pick. But I don't know, if I were the Jets, I'd rather just take the first and second round the next year instead of just a first round this year. Just real quick, Jermichael Finley will not take a pay cut and will stay on the Packers. He's supposed to make around $9 million this year. Hopefully he actually does better like he did a couple years ago, and he would actually catch the ball instead of drop it all the time. But, if you have no hands, how are you going to eat? But lastly, though, with Greg Jennings going to the Vikings, that's a huge thing going on right now. What do you think about Greg Jennings going to the Vikings?
Some people, half of you viewers are going to hate me for this, but I'm more of a Viking fan than I am a Packer fan. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I like to see the Vikings steal another Packer. I just say it proves who the better team is, in all honesty. Who wants to play for them crappy Packers? That's why they all come to the Vikings. I know half of you hate me for saying that now. But what do the facts say, Jake?
I like the Packers now, as probably people can tell, my favorite team is the Buccaneers, but you always got love for lovable losers,
Oh, no, they're not the lovable losers. They're going to win a Super Bowl eventually. But you have to remember, the Packers won a bunch of games in 1919. Who cares?
Yeah, it's 10 years ago, so. But yeah, Greg Jennings, they said actually Brett Favre played a role in him coming to the Vikings. Greg Jennings was given more money than the Packers were offering. I don't know. I could see Greg Jennings doing well. I don't see him doing as well since he's been hurt. He has Christian Ponder, not Aaron Rodgers. But, it's a good pickup. Since they traded away Percy Harvin, they'll have 2 first-round picks now, and going into this draft, probably getting a receiver and then getting maybe some more help for Christian Ponder. I see this as a huge year for Christian Ponder. If Christian Ponder doesn't shape up and do what he's supposed to, I can see them looking somewhere else. And you remember how surprised everybody was when they picked him. He did have one of the highest Wonderlic scores in that draft for quarterbacks, and that's why they picked him. He's one of the smartest out of Florida State.
Right.
But
at some point you have to perform.
Yeah, at some point you have to perform. He can be as paper smart or as book smart as he wants, but on the field he has to perform like he's supposed to.
Well, on that note, I think that's about all the time we have for today, folks. So, I'm Mike Falk.
And I'm Jake File, and you stay classy, Eau Claire.